All right, today we're telling the story of a man who took on a terrifying plague. And then, get this, he gave the cure away for free. We're talking about Jonas Salk. And his story, it really makes you think about some big things, like science, money, and what we all owe to each other. Let's go back to 1952. Think about this number, 57,628. That's not just a statistic. That was the number of Americans, mostly kids, by the way, who were struck down by poliomyelitis. It was this terrifying disease that just cast a shadow of fear over every single summer. And of those nearly 60,000 people, this is how many were left with some form of permanent paralysis. 21,000. In a single year. You could imagine the panic. Polio was this national nightmare that overshadowed pretty much everything else. People were desperate for a hero. So right in the middle of all this fear, this terror, this young researcher steps onto the scene. His name was Jonas Salk. He was the son of Russian Jewish immigrants, and he was about to start a journey that wouldn't just rewrite medical history, but would also challenge our whole idea of what a scientist could be. And Salk, well, he was a prodigy. I mean, look at this path. He just flew through his education. But here's the thing, he wasn't really driven to be a regular doctor, treating one patient at a time. He saw a much, much bigger picture. He wanted to use science to save millions, to work on a scale that could literally change the world. Okay, so here's a twist. Salk's big breakthrough with polio, it didn't actually start with polio at all. Nope, it started with a completely different enemy, the flu. This was during World War II, and he was part of this huge effort to create a flu vaccine for the troops. And it was right there, in that crucible, that he started to champion a really controversial new idea. So he was working under his mentor, Thomas Francis Jr., and they were refining this pretty radical approach. See, back then, the common wisdom, the scientific consensus, was that you needed a live but weakened virus to really kick the immune system into gear. Salk? He thought there had to be a better, safer way. And he was about to bet his entire career on it. This slide really gets to the heart of the scientific battle that was going on. It was a huge debate. On one side, you had the establishment. We're talking brilliant people like Albert Sabin, who were absolutely convinced that live virus vaccines were the only way to go. And then on the other side, you had Salk, kind of the outsider, right? And he's arguing for this totally different, safer path. It was a massive gamble against what everyone else believed. And just as Salk is getting his method down, the problem gets even bigger. It turns out scientists confirmed what they'd been suspecting for a while. It wasn't just one type of polio. There were three different faces of this monster. That meant any vaccine that was going to work had to be a triple threat. It had to defeat all three strains at once. Talk about moving the goalposts. Okay, so Salk has his 3-strain killed virus vaccine. He's developed it in his pretty modest lab in Pittsburgh, and now he's ready for the next phase. But this was the biggest hurdle yet. A massive nationwide trial to prove once and for all that his vaccine was safe and that it worked. I mean, the fate of millions of kids was riding on this. The sheer scale of this trial is it's hard to even wrap your head around. It was the largest medical experiment in American history, a logistical marvel that basically took an army of volunteers. We're talking over 1.8 million kids, the polio pioneers, who rolled up their sleeves. Their parents just put all their faith in this new science. And then on April 12th, 1955, the results came in. And the news was just met with this incredible wave of euphoria that swept the entire country. I mean, church bells were ringing, people were cheering in the streets, parents were literally weeping with relief. It felt like a war had just been won. Overnight, Jonas Salk wasn't just a scientist anymore. He was a global hero, a household name. And all this fame led the legendary journalist Edward R. Murrow to ask him a question live on television that would end up defining Salk's entire legacy. And the question was this: who owns the patent? Now, the potential value here was just staggering. We're talking billions of dollars in today's money. So who was going to profit from this world-changing invention that so many people had worked to create? And Salk's answer? Well, it was perfect. Well, the people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun? Just like that, with that simple, profound answer, Salk became more than a scientist. He became a kind of moral icon, a symbol of this idea that the greatest discoveries, well, they shouldn't belong to any one person. They should belong to everyone. Some things are just too important to own. Now, of course, the full story is always a little more complicated, right? The lawyers had actually already decided the vaccine probably wasn't patentable anyway. And the foundation that funded all the research, the March of Dimes, built on small donations from millions of regular people, they already believed the vaccine belonged to the public. But Salk's words, they just cut through all that legal stuff. His public declaration made it a moral issue, and that ensured the recipe for this life-saving vaccine was shared freely with the whole world, fast. But Salk's story doesn't end with that incredible moment of triumph. The years that followed were actually filled with some real heartbreak, but also a new, incredibly ambitious vision for the future of science and humanity. Yeah, that euphoria, it didn't last long. A terrible, tragic manufacturing error at a place called Qatar Laboratories led to a batch of the vaccine that actually contained live poliovirus. Now, Salk's science was perfect, but this disaster just shook public confidence to its core. And in a really cruel twist of irony, the whole incident pushed the US toward adopting Sabin's live virus vaccine, the very thing Salk had argued against from the start. But Salk wasn't deterred. He turned his focus to a brand new project. He actually teamed up with the legendary architect Louis Kahn to build a totally new kind of research center out in California, the Salk Institute. It was meant to be like a cathedral to science, a place where the absolute best minds from all different fields could come together and just tackle the biggest questions about life itself. And this new chapter in his life, it also led him to this new way of thinking, something he called his biophilosophy. Salk came to believe that humanity was at a major turning point. We were moving from an age of just endless growth and competition to a new era that was going to require balance and wisdom. He argued that our survival didn't depend on being the fittest anymore. It depended on becoming the wisest. It's a philosophy that really grew out of a lifetime of thinking about how we can all live better, healthier lives together. So what's his ultimate legacy? Just look at these numbers. It says it all. Since the global effort to wipe out polio began, an effort powered by his vaccine and the ones that came after, cases have dropped by over 99.9%. A disease that once terrorized the entire planet is now, right now, on the brink of being gone for good. So, Salk's story, and especially that famous answer of his, it leaves us with a really provocative thought. And it's probably more relevant today than it ever has been. In a world where medicine is so commercialized, it forces us to ask, what is science really for? Who should it serve? And what's the value of a discovery that, just like the sun, belongs to all of us?